Hi, everyone. Please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Before I talk about the connection between Charlie Kirk's chart and the USA chart, as well as Trump's chart to the American chart as well, before that, reconnecting with Kirk's chart by itself, as presented yesterday, one thing that I need to add is that there was also the transit in Jupiter, which I didn't mention. And it's an example of how Jupiter, when it's in a square or opposition, can be very unhelpful if you are looking for protection, which in this case would presumably be to be safe, to stay alive. And that's because you see it there in transit, directly opposing his Uranus-Neptune conjunction. And we have to keep in mind that that conjunction is squaring into his Libra planets and into the Black Moon and Eris. So Jupiter is filling the bottom end of that configuration, and not in a good way, because it's opposing and squaring in two directions for the squares and then the opposition. And so I often remind people of this because they have this idea that Jupiter is a wonderful planet, which it is. It's the great benefactor. But in a situation like this, it actually adds to the problem. You would either want it in a trine or a sextile or a conjunction, or you don't want it to be around at all. But if it's making angles like this, it complicates matters. Now, as far as his connection, here I'm talking about Charlie Kirk, to the American chart, looking again at that T-square of his, with all those planets in Aries, Libra, and Capricorn, you notice that, in a sense, the same thing happens. The American planets in Cancer fill the bottom and you get this grand cross. So there's a lot of dynamism. But if you ask, well, what does it mean? Connections like this point to a person that is trying to change something. Dynamic energy is the energy of change, the energy of transformation. In his case, he is seeking to make America great again, along with our current president. He's seeking to transform the situation into something that he thinks is a good idea. But we also know that at best, if you think of the country, gazillions, well, not gazillions, but certainly 350 million people, however big the number is of people that vote, even if you said, let's say 200 million or 150 million, of all those millions, at best, he would have a 40% level of support. In other words, many more people are against his ideas than are for the ideas. And given that he is in a very dynamic configuration, he has to expect a lot of opposition to what he's trying to do. And if you add on top of that, that through his character and through the topic that we're talking about here, he was quite controversial, including being very aggressive and demanding a certain type of change, he's going to arouse opposition. And this can include danger, especially when you see a chart situation with planets like Uranus, Neptune, Eris, the Black Moon. It's complicated and dangerous. And indeed, what happened here is that the trigger became the Black Moon and Mars, the Saturn and Neptune in different places, and hence the final result. Something else that I'll add is that if you look at the connection between his planets and the American planets, you notice that his Libra planets go to where the American Saturn is. And so in a sense, when you connect with someone Saturn, that person can ground you if things are going well, but it can also rebuke you. And I mean, here he's getting both in a way. He's getting a lot of support, but he's getting a significant number in the population being against him. So that's the first thing. But then you notice going the other way, his own Saturn connects to the American moon. And so then he is doing a kind of paternalistic trip on the American energy. It's what he was doing. He was make America great again is the idea we're going back to the 1940s, 50s, everything that came out of this guy related to the idea that women should stay at home, produce babies, and let men, indeed white men, be in charge. That was the message. I mean, let's face it, let's be very clear, all due respect to Charlie Kirk and the MAGA movement. That's really what they're doing. Let's stop kidding around here. The fact that this does not in any way condone murdering anybody, that's a separate issue, but that's what was happening. And so you're going to get resistance, plain and simple. Now, if you ask, well, why did he get so much support and become so famous? There's a lot to work with there too, because if you look at his Libra planets, they trine the American moon and they trine the American Mars. So that works really, really well. Indeed, the American Mars can be a pretty angry Mars. This is what Trump has agitated so much during these years because his planets cut right across there. He's got his sun on the American Mars and the moon opposing it. Well, Charlie Kirk aligns with trines, and his Scorpio planets trine the American planet. So that also works. But this doesn't come without risks. And they can be triggered at some point. And indeed, they were triggered. And it's sad to see that in some ways, the very thing that this man stood really strongly for example, he was heard to say that we must keep the Second Amendment, even if it means that people lose their life. Well, he lost his life because of the attitude we have to the Second Amendment. Does that mean we need to get rid of the Second Amendment? Not necessarily. I'm merely pointing out that this is, if you swim in these waters, you're at risk of something going badly wrong at some point, especially in the era that we're living in. And as far as Trump in the American chart, well, we've talked about this before. That's the key thing, the fact that you get that sun moon cutting across where the Mars is, and also, that's square the Neptune energy. So that Mars-Neptune square in the American chart, which has been badly agitated by the transiting Neptune during these years, which so much resemble the pre-Civil War period of the 1850s when Neptune was in the same place, because the war broke out literally when Neptune entered Aries back in 1861. So he is totally wired to that, but he has other really good connections as well, because, for example, his Libra Jupiter trines that at Mars, and his Cancer planets, at least initially, in linking to the American planets, means that he becomes part of the system in terms of getting his message out. But whenever you're bringing in Saturn contacts, like the fact that the American Saturn is connecting to his Jupiter, there's always the possibility you're going to get rebuked sooner or later, pushed back against, denied. And indeed, he already has been at one point. Because people will often say Trump has gotten away with everything. Well, not everything. I mean, he spent quite a block of time in the wilderness. Post the 2020 election, meaning 2021, 22, 23, and most of 24, he was in the wilderness fighting for his life. That's a fact. Now he's returned, and I'm still seeing that curious pattern that happened the last time around. He gets in on Saturn cycles in the mutable signs. Back in the 16 to 18 period was Saturn in Sagittarius mutable. When it went to Capricorn in 2018, things started to go down. 2018 was sort of okay up till the election. And then things got worse and worse and worse, including COVID. The whole thing became a disaster. And now the mutable cycle is Pisces. in 2024, parts of 2025. By 26, 27, 28, Saturn's in Aries. So we're going cardinal again, and it gets very, very complicated when you get on the wrong side of Saturn. So to conclude, once again, American Saturn on Trump's Jupiter, cardinal, Libra, but also Trump's Saturn, together with Venus, conjoining the American Mercury. More cardinal action, which, by the way, explains really well why he's not being truthful when he says he supports free speech. That Saturn on the American Mercury is a clear indicator of the fact that he wants to clamp down on the speech that he doesn't like. He wants to restrict the kind of speech that is against him. But separately from that, the cardinality of Cancer and Libra was challenged severely 18, 19, 20 in the prior cycle. Now it'll be challenged from Aries. So you simply have to wait this guy out. He's going to face the rebuke. Now it's going to be from the ninth sign, which is a place of, amazingly, all the topics that are necessary for him. Immigration, ninth house. Legal issues, the courts, ninth house. Foreign affairs, ninth house. Deeply, deeply problematic. We simply have to be patient.